Hello and welcome to another Level 3 Technical Certificate video. In this session we're going to be talking about wet strength agents, one of the functional aids series of videos. So first of all we need to really know what wet strength is, and before we talk about what strength is we need to be aware that there are two types of wet strength. There is permanent wet strength. An example of permanent wet strength would be materials such as kitchen roll or tea bags or paper towels. And then you've got temporary wet strength. Temporary wet strength you'd find in sort of toilet rolls or disposable paper receptacles that are often used in hospitals. And what is the definition of wet strength? The definition of wet strength is an item that has at least 15% of its dry strength value when wet. So let's have a look at the mechanism of wet strength. Here we've got two typical fibres. We've got the hydrogen bonding, and if that hydrogen bond gets wet because of the presence of water, the hydrogen bond is burst and then we have no strength because we have no bonding. So mechanism number one would be to somehow protect this hydrogen bond. If, for example, we coated it with wax, then the water can't get at it, and so we have wet strength. And the type of items that use this technology will be things like fish boxes, for example, cardboard boxes impregnated with wax for holding fish. Good example of one old-fashioned way of producing temporary wet strength. Mechanism number two for improving wet strength is to add to or strengthen the hydrogen bonds that are there. So if it takes a certain length of time to break one hydrogen bond, what happens if we added an extra 100, an extra 200, or an extra 300 hydrogen bonds? It would take the water longer to work its way through and break them all down. So this would be an example of temporary wet strength. And materials like dialdehyde starches produce temporary wet strength, and as we mentioned earlier, that would be ideal for toilet rolls or certain other paper receptacles. Mechanism number three is producing bonds that are actually insensitive to water. So if we take materials like MF resin or UF resin or chymene, these are water repellent particles in a suspension, and what we need to do is to put them into the wet end of the machine, encourage them to stick onto the fibres, and then once we've formed the sheet we press out the water, we dry it, and then once we've dried it these particles will then start to cross-link or interact with each other, and they will form water insoluble bonds because the particles themselves are hydrophobic. So they have a bond that is insensitive to water. So MF resins, UF resins, material like chymene, which is a PAAE generic name, we use them in places like kitchen roll and hand towel, for example, tea bags as well. And finally, the fourth mechanism of wet strength is to construct a network of water insensitive material, and this is a technology very well used in the tea bag industry. So tea bag will consist of normal plant fibres, hardwoods or softwoods, or non-wood fibres like abaca. Mixed in with that will be sort of polypropylene or nylon type fibres. And as we go through the drying process, air float drying process, we heat them up such that these organic fibres will melt and weld into each other. So therefore you've constructed this network of water insensitive material that's enveloping all the natural fibres. So polypropylene type fibres ideally used for tea bag manufacture. So a quick summary of what we've talked about in this session. Wet strength is defined as something that's at least 15% of the dry strength value of the item. We can protect or create extra hydrogen bonds to improve wet strength. We can use water insensitive bonds either by cross-linking these tiny particles together or producing welded fibres like nylon and polypropylene. And the interesting thing is, these bonds, MF resin, UF resins, can take up to 21 days to actually fully cure. So once you've made the paper, only then do these reactions start to occur. And that has implications for broke, for example. The longer you leave your broke, then the more these bonds are going to cross-link, and the harder it's going to be to reprocess your broke. So with materials that have wet strength agents in, the faster you can reprocess your broke, the easier it's going to be, the cheaper it's going to be, and the less damage you're going to get to your fibres. Okay, well, thank you for listening to this video, and we hope you will follow us on any of this social media.